And it seems to tease that Mizuno's driver, assumably for not this year, I'm guessing next year.
It's very clearly labeled 2026.
Okay. Is the first Mizuno driver to do
Well, it
blank.
says not Mizuno.
Oh,
World's first
okay.
blank driver.
What's up, everybody? How you living? No putts given. Here we are, post PGA Championship week. Tony picked Scheffler correctly. I did not. I should have seen it coming. Tried to be the contrarian. It didn't work out. So, whatever.
It's your Valhalla makeup victory.
You know, it's
winning is nice. Not getting arrested is probably better.
It was. Do you see the Nike commercial? I mean, I wish Nike shoes and like golf apparel were as good as their commercials. Like, they're just not. But the commercial was great. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a nice little play on words. Has something to do with Scottie's situation the year previous, getting arrested, and it's awesome. It's fantastic. Anyway, Cozy Earth. God, I love you people. You're doing a great job over there at Cozy Earth, making unbelievably comfortable sheets, blankets, house apparel. I'm not going to go into all the details on this episode. We've talked about Cozy Earth before, but they were nice enough to extend the discount. And what I mean by that is 40% off. And we'll put the link below. So anything on the site, 40% off. Just use the code NOPUTS. That's all you got to do. No putts. Save yourself some cash and get ridiculously comfortable bed sheets, blankets.
I keep using this phrase, bubble cuddle blanket.
Blanket.
I went with this, the Bandon Dudes quarter zip. It's more on brand for our podcast, but I don't know what you're going through in Colorado right now, but you remember that episode of Steinfeld where George took the shower and was all sweaty afterwards, and he's like, it didn't take.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about spring in Saratoga, New York right now. It refuses to take. So Thursday, Friday, it was like 80 degrees. Today it's like 50, and I'm freezing in my house because I've already turned the heat off for the year. So I almost shot this podcast wrapped in a bubble cuddle blanket. It may come to that. Anyway.
Well, maybe we'll get there in a little bit. But let's dig into Scottie first. So let's start there. I mean, the only thing that slows this guy down, right, is, road cops and, a misbehaving knife and some ravioli. That seems to be about what can stop him.
It's unreal. It is the biggest kind of sustained heater we've seen since peak Tiger, and I'm not trying to compare the two because Tiger is obviously on another level in that respect, but I think next best thing may qualify here.
I mean, it is, it's, you can say what you want, about not just the what he's done, but how he's done it. Betting markets can tell you something, right? I mean, right now, already for the U.S. Open, again, Scheffler's the favorite. He was like plus 400 last time I looked. Rory was like plus 600.
What's Phil at?
Phil, boy, he
is on the list.
Phil struggled to break 80. What's interesting too, just for the math people out there, plus 400 odds means that it's kind of an implied win probability of roughly 20%. So a win probability of 1 out of 5 in a field of, yes, you have qualifiers, etc. But just go down this list: Scheffler, McIlroy, DeChambeau, Schauffele, Rahm, Ludwig, Oberg, Morikawa, Koepka, JT, Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton, Patrick Cantlay, Matsuyama, Jordan Spieth, Tommy Fleetwood. And you're saying, and that's just what, the top 10, 15. And he has a 1 out of 5. I mean, that's what the market is telling us. I don't have Tiger's numbers in front of me, where it's kind of like Tiger or the field, but man.
Well, I mean, that's a great point, though. We are almost into that territory, right? Where it's Scottie or the field. And, maybe the difference is you'd probably still be inclined to take the field with that bet, whereas at peak Tiger, you were like, just give me Tiger. Nobody else is going to win this thing.
Yeah, even at 1 out of 5, right? You say, hey, 4 out of 5 means it's not Scottie. But still, 20%. I mean, that's crazy. And we're going to dive into his bag here a little bit because a lot of people understand he is a TaylorMade brand ambassador. Yes, Rory is still arguably the face of TaylorMade more so now, perhaps, but on paper, we can make an argument that Scottie is not a very good brand ambassador. And I say that in all seriousness. We're going to tell you that this is nothing against TaylorMade, nothing like that or whatever. But let's start going through this because it really did kind of strike us.
So to back up too, before we get into this, so it's, I think every manufacturer, when they're dealing with their superstars, would love a 14 club deal, meaning he's paid and all 14 clubs have to be from that brand. That said, it's not uncommon to see 10, 11, 12 club deals to get it done. I think based on what we see in this bag, Scottie might be on an 11.
Right.
But as you said, he's...
so let's just start going through it. Because everybody starts with the driver, right? I mean, driver and golf ball maybe, but let's just start with the driver. And he's QI 10.
Yeah, and that's, again, to the point I was just making, most manufacturers, when they give you a club deal, whether it's 11 or 14 clubs, the driver is invariably part of that. Like, you got to play the driver. And so, Scottie's playing a TaylorMade, but it's the QI 10, not the QI 35.
Yeah, and it's kind of become a little bit of a thing, and I'm sure TaylorMade wishes this was less of a thing this year. We're talking so much about the QI 10, but we're talking about what they're playing. Rory's another great example, right, where some people want to call him the best driver of this generation of golfers. If he's not number one, I don't know who is, but he flirted with...
I mean, it's a short list, and he's on it.
He flirted with QI 35. He put it in for a couple days, immediately took it back out, and then kind of said, hey, I'm going to stick with the older stuff through at least the Masters, and we'll see what happens. Well, he goes in, wins the Masters, completes the Grand Slam, and then is, again, sticking with kind of the previous generation product. I don't see that as much a knock on like QI 35 as much as it's like, hey, maybe QI 10 is really good. But yet, if you're paying a guy to play your clubs,
ideally you want him in the new stuff. Ideally you want him in all of your stuff, but you have to at some point go, what are you going to tell Scottie Scheffler he needs to change? Like, hey, we think you could really improve instead of the guy who wins almost everything.
Right.
We think, we're like getting close to, unless you can promise a 100% win percentage, I think probably good where he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's, again, winning, well, Tiger said that, right? Kind of winning solves everything. So whether it's new equipment, old equipment, whatever, if he's, Scheffler's winning big events, winning majors, and that will reflect well on TaylorMade, absolutely. But
I'm sure they're happy to say the winner of the PGA Championship won with TaylorMade clubs, and the specificity that comes later is going to be less important. Let's not sweat the details, right?
Yeah, but we do. So talk to me about fairway woods. What do we got there?
Yeah, this is 2 fairway woods in the bag. A QI 10, again, 3 wood, 15 degrees.
Yep.
And then, interestingly, we do have the QI 35 7 wood. One, I love seeing a 7 wood, and this is...
Who doesn't?
I get this in the fairway wood space. So, my own experience, and I'll speak specifically to the 7 wood. The first time a 7 wood went in the bag for me was the TSI 7 wood.
Oh, okay.
And I've had TSR and now GT.
Yep.
And frankly, I I think I like the TSI the best of the three. It's just one of the, we've talked about that. It seems like we talk about this almost every episode. But if you find a comfort level with a fairway wood, stick with it. And so I think when you're looking at Scotty's bag, hey, maybe there was an opportunity with the QI35.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it fits something.
Yeah. With the QI10, happy where he was, no reason to change.
Nope. Irons. He plays a P7 T-dubs. So what I love here, what gets me going about this is like, again, an absolutely elite ball striker. Like, it's just, I mean, I can't imagine. I would love to see him again. I saw him hit balls in person once when we were at the Kingdom and we were hanging out and he was kind of practicing or doing something over there. And like, that's awesome. But like, again, in competition, pulling off these shots. And the commentators noting, right? God, it's like, I think Colton Osteen said, it's like watching a video game unfold, right, in front of your eyes. And it's like, okay, so again, don't change anything. But number one, how many people fit into the P7 TW blades? Number two, they're Tiger. Two, yeah. Two. TW.
Easy question. SS. Easy question, yeah.
You know? So it's like, it's not like, and again, not that it has to be a current model, but it'd be nice if it was. The P7 TWs certainly are not. In fact, you could argue they're, kind of a milled version of a blade design that Tiger had used for decades. Yeah. So from a design standpoint,
I'll tell you, like, to put all of this in some kind of context, right? We put up the what's in the bag post, and part of the deal, right? You want to we put in affiliate links, right? We want readers to click on stuff and ideally buy product, right? Like if you're, please do.
Please.
It was not possible to find links for some of the stuff in this guy's bags, certainly not at major retailers. So that's kind of what we're working with here. And it's amazing, like the best player in the world. So like you mentioned, the TW irons.
Yep.
It does raise the question, like, TaylorMade, seriously, guys, how much does this guy have to win before we get some type of Scheffler-specific equipment? I guess the argument is he's already using Tiger stuff. What are we going to do, rebrand it? But, I mean, we've had Roars Protos and TW specials. I'm thinking Scheffler has kind of earned that level based on this, so we'll see.
Change the stamp. Change the
do
stamp
something.
And
so we go from these, I don't want to say antique Tiger irons, but they're not a new offering. Then we go to this Srixon utility, the ZU85, which, or as we've always called it, right, the Zubs.
Yep, the Zubs.
The Srixon Zubs utility. Again,
which is a great club. Fantastic.
Not a thing you're going to easily find a current link for.
Nope.
And here he goes, like, good enough for Scotty, right? So you can win a major. It turns out
you too can be the number one player on the planet.
Right. This is going to be the next pitch for an article. Is your gear too new to be good?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
So we got that, and then we go into the wedges. And
what are we doing?
You're thinking, all right, I got this one. Wedges, not a problem. Golfers, wedges are more or less disposable. They refresh them. They wear through the grooves often. So you're probably going to see some pretty current stuff in the wedges, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Scotty. Titleist SM8s. Vokey SM8s.
Yeah, even Vokey is, because that's kind of the thing. I'm sure not everybody understands how this works. But so TaylorMade, typically, TaylorMade guys, you get an email. And it's a rundown of all the TaylorMade equipment that was in his bag. But if somebody's playing somebody else's equipment, for example, two Titleist/Vokey wedges, you'll get an email from Titleist as well. Their weekly tour report running things down, and they can't say Scottie Scheffler. They
can say the winner of the PGA Championship.
Right. So you get
you figure out the rest.
The winner of the PGA Championship, who we can tell you with confidence, a high degree of confidence, was in fact Scottie Scheffler. Played Vokey wedges.
Yep.
Lost in the detail of that statement is that two of them were SM8s.
And we're currently on SM10. And every number is basically 2 years. That's kind of the generation. So,
And we're in year 2 now of SM10.
right. So, you're not going to find any new SM8s out there, people. Like, and again, for the record, Scottie's not playing a wedge that has 5 years of use on it. I'm sure they were brand new when you put them in the bag.
Yeah, and you can be confident that Aaron Dill and the team have the capabilities to get Scottie Scheffler new SM8s.
Right. But you're not going to get those, and you're not going to find those at your PGA Tour Superstore or your Golf Galaxy or whatever.
Be on the clearance rack if you do, for sure.
Yeah, and they'll probably have about 5 years of wear on them. So
yeah,
I would not buy them.
The used bin. Yeah, that to me is super interesting. But we've talked about wedges on a lot of episodes and fitting wedges and all of that stuff. And I think it's as much as we go into the weeds on what you should look for in your fittings and how to get dialed in and all these metrics that matter.
Yeah.
If you want to boil it down to what you're actually being fitted for, like the thing that is causing a club to work for you, there's some nuance on how you respond to the way it looks, right? There's some of that subjective stuff that kind of bleeds into performance. Yep. But fundamentally, you are fitted for a center of gravity location.
Right.
And that's not
and
sexy.
Grind,
it doesn't sound fun.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in wedges, right. But even though, like you say that, but there is an element of the center of gravity location that is tied to the grind.
For sure.
But broad strokes, you're being fitted for, any club you're being fitted for is primarily for the center of gravity location. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of asking ourselves, like, why would a guy who can have any wedge he wants, right? He can get access to the newest stuff pretty easily. Like I just can't envision a scenario in which he walks into the Titleist van or goes to see Aaron Dill and says, "Hey, I would love some SM10s," and they're like, "No,
we're out. Yeah, we're not.
We'll give anybody else on this tour SM10s, but not you, Scottie."
It's
so. And it's just one of those things, right? Because we've been in the meetings with Vokey. Every presentation is how, or not entirely, but part of it is how the center of gravity location has changed from the previous model. Right? It's higher, more toeward, more heelward, more centered, however you want to describe it, right? These subtle changes of center of gravity location moving around. And so within that context, it makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. SM8 CG location either works for Scottie, inarguably, which certainly you could make that case, or he's simply just comfortable with the trajectory and spin properties
and you're not going to argue
that it
the
delivers.
Results. You're not going to say, this will perform better for you. Better than what? Better than being the best player on the planet? Better than getting up and down from everywhere? Better than what? Like...
I mean, it's worth mentioning he does have a low bounce K SM10 in the bag.
Yes, which is a new one, and the 60 we would, So there you go. You can buy the low bounce K, in that. Then we go to the golf ball and the putter, and those are both, yay affiliate, stuff that you can go buy retail right now. That, again, everybody should be slamming Rory if anybody's saying he was the one that kind of suggested Scottie go from the blade to the mallet, and since then he's gone on an absolute heater. So you got the Spider X, right? We got the putter.
Spider,
awesome.
Tour X, L neck. I mean, it's as matter of fact as anything in Scottie's bag.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then
the most matter of fact, right? Even, golf pride grip on it. So we're just, it's fundamental and routine.
It's about as retail as it comes, right? And then golf ball. I'm sure TaylorMade would love nothing more than to get him into a TP5 or TP5X. But he's a Titleist guy.
He's in a Pro V1. And this, actually, so when I wrote the piece last year about TaylorMade's growing ball business, I want to say it was about a year ago, and we'll have Nick throw the link in to that story if anyone's interested. But I talked to the TaylorMade guys about it. And I think it's very safe to say they would love to have Scottie in a TaylorMade ball. I would go so far as to say, like, if you went through and was sort of like tried to assign a dollar value to any piece of equipment in a contract bag that isn't from the manufacturer, the primary equipment sponsor, I think this the golf ball probably is the singest high value line item. Like I think TaylorMade would love to get him in a TP5, TP5X, whatever it happens to be. But again, I had this conversation with TaylorMade, and I think their mindset on it is very much like yours and mine is, and that is like, what are you going to tell this guy? Like, it's legitimate. Like, you're not going to be playing much better golf than you're playing right now.
What do you want him to do? Yeah.
What is a golf ball going to do for him that the it's not being done right now? Again, it's
right.
The execution is fundamentally there. It is pretty clear from most everything else in this bag that when Scottie is comfortable, he's not inclined to make a change. And I think the last 2+3 years indicate that he is exceptionally comfortable with the overwhelming majority of his equipment. So it's one of those, I'm sure TaylorMade would love to have Scottie play a TP5. I just think, no disrespect to the golf ball at all. I just think where Scottie is right now, that is a really, really tough sell.
Yeah.
No thanks, bro. I'm good.
Finish up with this question, and we're not going to answer it today, but I'd love to hear what people think out there too, which is like, we're just going to use a round number, and this number is not verified or anything, just for argument's sake. For every $1 million that TaylorMade pays Scottie, right? And they're looking at that number, as others do, based on, okay, what's the value? You have TV time in there. There's ways that they use metrics, right, to come up with these numbers. And so of that, what percentage of every $1 million is based on just the association between Scottie and TaylorMade? So people go, hey, Scottie Scheffler, best player in the world, TaylorMade. Just that connection. Is that 70%, 80% of the value? And then the other 10, 20, 30% is like the specific products? Like, okay, oh man, I'm going to buy that putter because that player. Is it driving value for a specific piece of equipment or style of equipment or model of equipment? Or is it really just that brand association and like win, best player, TaylorMade, that's worth $800,000 out of every $1 million they pay him? I don't know what the answer is, but something to ponder. Anyway, have you ever had a non-conforming driver, Tony?
I wish.
That was all the rage this week. All the talk. Rory's driver, it's non-conforming. He had to go to a backup. There's something nefarious going on. Subterfuge. Stop, people. Stop it. We're going to explain why. Why is a driver becoming non-conforming and a player having to go to a backup driver not something that's worth more than a 30-second mention?
I mean, it's
worth talking about for more than 30 seconds, but why is
one of these days, right? We've talked about this, I think, just last week or the week before, how drivers get hotter over time.
Right.
So, they do loosen up. They do get faster. So
they
that
break in.
Right. That is one explanation. So you have that in play. And we talked about how generally most manufacturers will take, I don't want to say slow, but definitely not the fastest heads that they measure. They're not going to give those to tour players because you don't want this situation to occur. No tour player wants his driver deemed non-conforming at the start of or in the middle of a tournament.
Right.
So you go to great lengths to avoid that. That said, and I'm sure there's some behind-the-scenes grumblings because I've heard about it every step of the way, but there are some inconsistencies in the testing. Right. So it is dependent on the actual machine being used, right? They don't, every last one of them doesn't provide identical measurements every step of the way. There are some differences between operators, who's doing the measurements, right? So all of these things come into play so that a driver that was conforming last week could very well be non-conforming next week, and under the right circumstances could be plenty good to play the week after that.
And that's and just to put some numbers on it for people, the 239, right? 239 microseconds.
Is it 239?
I thought it was 239, then plus or minus 18, right?
Yeah.
Gets you to the 250 257, 258.
257 sounds right. I used to have these committed to memory.
Yeah,
It
I
hasn't
did.
come up in a while, but
I
I
did
think
too.
you're right.
So 239 plus 17. What are you're talking
Which
about?
is just a measurement of, like, there's this little pendulum, like they strap it into a gauge, crank it down, whatever, lock it in place, drop a pendulum so that it contacts the face, and then there's a measurement of how long that pendulum stays in contact. How many microseconds, I believe, right? Is it microseconds?
Right. Yeah, it's microseconds.
How long
And
it
so-
stays in contact with the face. So it's an interesting kind of approach to determining the responsiveness of a driver, I guess.
Yeah, and the part where people get all bent out of shape and shouldn't is this, right? These guys hit hundreds of balls a week. This stuff. Every driver, like you said, it becomes more, however you want to think about it, more pliable. It breaks in. I always say it breaks in before it breaks down. And yeah, you want to use that driver as long as you can, but over repeated use, every driver for these guys is going to become non-conforming at some point. So there is a pitch count, if you will, on a driver head. And just so people don't get so bent out of shape, let's say a driver tests it and they test it 1 week and it's at 255. Okay, so they know the limit's 257 and it's at 255.
And they're sneaking up on it, maybe.
They're sneaking up on it. Like, maybe I got another week out of it, maybe not. And let's say the next week it tests at 260. And they go, man, that's 3 microseconds over the limit. Every 10 microseconds is roughly a quarter of a mile per hour of ball speed, assuming perfectly efficient contact.
Yeah, you're not squeezing much. You're not squeezing much.
Right. You're talking.
It is not worth the inconvenience. The ball speed you get from just crossing over that limit is not worth the hassle of having to take a familiar club out of play.
Nobody is. It's not like
as evidenced by Scottie
NASCAR
Still
things where you're looking for maybe some of these little advantages to skirt the rules that we've seen. It's like nobody's sitting there going, oh man, if I can get this to 260 this week, that's going to give me this. Like, nobody's doing that. Like you said, the advantage of that extra 1 step, 1 foot, 2.2 feet maybe, is not worth going to a backup driver. And they actually asked Scottie Scheffler about this too. They're like, hey, so because the USGA they test about a third of the field at these. They don't tell you which ones pass. And
Random
which
sample. Random sample.
Yeah. And so they asked Scheffler, like, hey, did you have to go to a backup driver this week? And Scottie was like, yeah, I did. And kind of like, they're kind of waiting, like, isn't that a big deal? He's like, nope. I always got a backup. I had a backup ready to go. I knew this one was close. I've been using it for close to a year. So I was assuming probably, around now, pretty soon I was going to have to make a switch. So it's much more these guys like, yep, that pair of socks wore out, had to put on a new pair, and away we go. Big fat nothing burger, people. So,
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk about other equipment though real quick.
Okay.
Mizuno.
Okay. Mizuno.
You have 2 articles up there. Let's go to these 2. So Mizuno, a driver, and you put a post on there too, or I think it was a post from Mizuno, or maybe it was when John Barb was down at Mizuno's new fitting location, the Foundry.
Snapped a picture of the wall.
And it seems to tease that Mizuno's driver, assumably for not this year, I'm guessing next year.
It's very clearly labeled 2026.
Okay. Is the first Mizuno driver to do
Well, it
blank.
says not Mizuno.
Oh,
World's first
okay.
blank driver.
World's first blank driver. Based on the pictures that you saw and wrote about, do you have a guess?
No, I wish I did. I mean, it's obviously, and these are prototypes, and you can say that confidently if for no other reason than they actually have prototype
It says
written on the sole.
Fair. That seems reasonable.
Really piece, yeah. I had to do a lot of research to piece that one together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 prototype models, a version 1 and a version 2 of each, so suggesting 4 models. And what this kind of I extrapolated, I could be wrong here, but my best guess is that these are the final 2 prototypes for each one of those models.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to have a tour level, drive off, if you will. So that's what I'm guessing, is that we have 2 models that will launch initially. Maybe there'll be more, but certainly 2 currently listed as prototype D131 and D132 version 1, version 2 of each. And so I suspect that, and again, USGA photos, you gotta almost take what you think you see with a grain of salt, because there's nothing that provides absolute scale. So you're kind of like, oh, that kind of looks smaller.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Yeah.
And so, I think, the D132, for example, kind of looks smaller. Maybe it's not. Maybe they're all 4 the same because they have the same weight configuration. So, they could be 4 of the same, and it's all right. And maybe this is a 4 gets us 1. We have 2 versions of each, and this will be one of the drivers. 3 weights, so I don't know, but it does give a clue as to what Mizuno's working on. So we do see 3 weight system, front, back, and heel. The back weight in particular, definitely kind of extreme, more in the trailing edge than the sole. The front weight is pretty well forward as well. So that suggests a pretty significant range of movement and that kind of trajectory, spin, MOI control.
Radial geometry, if you will.
Yeah. Radius of gyration, correct.
There you go.
We have extended the radius of gyration. So compelling, but as for what the world's first is? Cream filled? I don't know.
I don't know either. The other 2 things that jumped out to me, like I said, I'll be a little bit interested if any of the models come out, or if the models come out and they all have the same 3 weight system. Just having that extra weight in the heel. Again, people tend to think draw bias, the ability to do that. And
sometimes, right, we've learned from other models, right? Sometimes that heavy heel is kind of your neutral. Right, that's your neutral setting, and then kind of as you move it around, then you get into more fade bias. So it's tough to say absolutely that there's a draw bias. Typically that heel position is used for draw bias, but it's not exclusively that way, right? That heavy heel can be your neutral.
No, and depending on the company, if you say the world's first blank driver, I would automatically go to like gimmick type ideas. I don't do that with Mizuno. And the reason that I don't is they tend to be more conservative, always have, in terms of performance claims. They are a very traditional Japanese company in a lot of regards. So the marketing elements that come out of that tend to be kind of less hyperbolic, and less loud and caffeinated. So I give that as kind of a context of, okay, I think it's going to be pretty legitimate. I don't know what it is, but like my first thought was like multi-face material or something where you have like different types of alloys, kind of like we saw that with Strixon this year on the irons, where they actually use different metals, right, in forging techniques to get different feels and hardnesses throughout the iron head. What if they did that in a driver to get different performance on off-center strikes versus on-center strikes? Not just variable face thickness, but what if you had variable face material?
Yeah, and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Advancements as unexciting as it tends to be in this regard, it's either it's materials or process.
Yeah,
that's
materials,
all.
Process, or fitting.
Yeah, right. It's all right. So it's
yeah.
And so process, for example, you look at something like 3D printing. That's materials and process to an extent. I don't think anybody but Cobra is sitting on a 3D printed driver right now, based on our understanding of the intellectual property.
Yeah.
So that's your process, and you could maybe mim a driver. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know that a whole one's ever been done that way. I don't know that you would.
Yep.
So yeah, I think materials is probably it. As to what that material is, what the impact is on performance, that's going to be the detail that matters as we move closer to launch, which according to the chart on the wall at Mizuno, which is probably as good a source as we're going to find at this point in time,
Right.
This doesn't happen until 2026. So
Yeah. So
we're early, and it's kind of fascinating again to not fully understand kind of what that competition bracket looks like. Is it 4 for 1 or 2 or 4 for 2 that we're competing for in terms of spots in the Mizuno lineup?
Right.
But I think that's what we're looking at. This is like, all right, these are kind of like, these are the final decision points. Mm-hmm. Let's have it. And we know this is what Mizuno does with their irons, and probably most companies, right? It's like, all right, these X are pretty good. We think any one of them could work in our lineup, could work for a Tour Pro. Let's give them to the staff and anybody else who wants to hit them, and decide which ones or one to move forward with. So I think that's where we are in the Mizuno development cycle.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that part of it's kind of cool, and we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, my only thought that we might hear something before 26 is that typically when we see something on a conforming list, it's for a couple reasons. Obviously, one of them is if they expect somebody to put it in play relatively soon. I don't know that that's the case because these are stamped prototype and still in that.
No loft designation either, so it is.
Like you said, maybe it's the world's first
loftless driver.
Loft adjustable. It can go from 6 degrees to 15.
There is, I mean, that is. I guess that's one possible. Where you could see a case where the USGA goes, no loft on this. I don't know. So
I don't know.
I don't see it being that, but it's why not have the conversation?
So speaking of advancements and things that are new, etc., Titleist started, like I said, their tour validation process, new T series irons. Again, you wrote about it. We'll link to it on there in a week and a half. We're going to go get our eyes and hands on them. We won't be able to tell you a ton about it until we are allowed to tell you more about it. But based on what you know so far and based on kind of what you've seen there so far, what are you hoping for out of this launch, and maybe what are you expecting?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I don't know what the performance story is going to be here, other than, all right, now we have a 250. Anyway. Yeah, so we've got 250 replacing 200, 350, and just for me, is again, I've described myself as a someone who played 350s for the better part of 2 years, begrudgingly. And so I look now at this 250 and the 350, and I look at what is inarguably a more refined, more sophisticated design, gone apparently. And if it's not gone, they hit it so well I don't care anymore. But that kind of plastic back badge piece that people hated in some cases, rare cases, actually had come off the back of the iron. So a more sophisticated, cohesive look. Yeah, you still got 100s and 150s, and again, 100 being far and away the most played iron on the PGA Tour. You would expect any improvements to that are going to be subtle. Likewise, the 150, which is a slightly faster take on 100 with some under the hood enhancements there, more speed and distance oriented. But again, I'm not expecting a reinventation of the wheel there.
Right.
You get into 250, 350, these categories that aren't necessarily, not to say they don't get any play on tour, but they're not inherently a tour iron.
Right.
Kind of that 4 iron, 3 iron, 4 iron spot.
Yeah, it could be a driving.
Right,
I mean, then again, they have the new U.
Yes, exactly, they do, right? But it's that spot in the bag where you need a little something extra to help maintain that 5 mile an hour ball speed gap. And so maybe that's where T50 looks like. But now, I've talked about for many subsequent Titleist releases now, like there is not a true P790 competitor. We've talked about that is the benchmark player's distance iron. And you can say, well, this the 200's a player's distance iron, or the 350 is a player's distance iron with a game improvement slant. However you want to classify that, call it whatever you want. Say whatever you want about it.
Yep.
It's not a true P790 competitor. Like you see those two on the shelves side by side, you don't think this is that. This is the Titleist answer to that. And I have long said, I've long felt that has been the missing piece in the Titleist lineup. And they've gotten, from a performance perspective, I think close. They're in the ballpark, different, but to have something that you're going to say, yeah, okay, I was sold on a P790. I was going into a golf shop to buy a P790, and I saw this, and I thought, well, as long as I'm here. Like, and that's
Yeah.
so that's what we've got. Like Titleist, well, as long as I'm here, I might as
Yeah.
well try this because look at this thing. So, you know, a little it says forged on the hosel. Who knows what that means, right? We
We'll
to
figure
what
out
extent the forge game is going to be played here.
details. I hope.
Yeah.
Here's my two hopes for
Okay.
this one. I hope that in the 100 and 150 space that they didn't change much, which it doesn't look like they did, but maybe addressed feel a little bit. We heard about this before, project feel. They had mentioned kind of in some internal discussions. You know, my experience has been in talking to other players as well, caveat aside, everything feels pretty good if you flush it all the time, which is a fantastic thing to do. When you compared like a Titleist to a Strixon, Mizuno, some of these, better players wouldn't necessarily say that the Titleist felt better. They would say, maybe a little firmer, maybe some, you know. And again, I get it's totally subjective.
Better than it used to.
Better than it used to, etc. So I'd be very interested to see, particularly the 1 in 150, if they do at impact give you any of that, like, oh god, these feel good type responses and sensations. On the other side, in that what now looks to be 250 instead of 200 and 350 space, my hope is that they've kind of done what you have said, which is I felt like they kind of attacked players' distance like this. Like, how do we maybe take this club and make it a little more forgiving, a little more players' distance-ish, but it didn't really get there. Okay, maybe overcooked it with the T200 two cycles
Let's take
ago.
the most indirect route to get to some place that everybody else already is.
And then we got the
So-
350s, but those weren't really played because definitely more kind of decidedly more on the game improvement side. I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
My hope
good,
is that this 200, 250 is
yeah, I guess
is their answer to P79. Like I hope
This is- this
a
is-
Titleist.
Yeah, this is an inherently personal way to look at this, right? Because you were there, no joke, right? Like they fit me into the 350s, and I'm one of these guys. If I go to Titleist, if I go to TaylorMade, I go to Callaway, and they fit me into something,
Yeah.
and it's not what I want, I'm like,
Right.
okay, I got a basement full of options of stuff that I've been fit for. I don't have
You
to
still
play
got those
this.
Yonex MBs down there?
Yeah, I do. Oh my, you want some spin. If you need to generate some spin. And so it was a case of like, I saw them and I was like, yeah, fit me into the 200s. Like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, but as long as I'll take 150s, that's fine. Just as long as I'm not in this 350, everything is fine. I do not want that iron. And then, long story short, Joey's like, you need this iron. And I'm like, Joey, you and I aren't going to be friends anymore. And so, but now I look at this 350.
I know.
And I expect it's tough to ascertain scale from the photos. And that's
and
all
how much
part of
offset
the
there is.
Titleist goes out of their way to tell you they're doing something, but not tell you anything
Right.
about what that is.
Right.
But based on the singular photo I have, and I expect we'll start to see more popping up. Mm-hmm. If the Titleist fitter said, you still need these? Be like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I can live with
They
that.
look
and not even begrudgingly. I will just be like, all right, yeah.
You will happily. So, but who knows? I don't know what I'm gonna fit in. Don't know. It's gonna be super interesting. So we'll
There's
see.
some
Stay tuned.
350s
We
in
can
my
at least
future, probably.
be able to give you our feedback on some stuff. We'll share details.
Also, 2 new utilities, right? And U505 T250 utility 505 appears to be the bigger one, I think. In this case, you talked about feel, right? And I'll go back when Harry Nodwell was working for us, and
Old Hair Bear.
yeah, he was on the podcast, and we were talking. This goes back to probably like the first U series utility. And he was like, we're talking. He's just like, it feels like shit when you hit it on the toe. And my first reaction was like,
don't hit it on the toe.
Well, no, like my first reaction was, dude, you probably shouldn't say that. And then I'm like, you know what, though? He's right. That club feels like shit when you miss. Like, you got to fix that. And I think, for 2 generations after that, it's been better. And hopefully, as you said on the feel story, maybe this is the one where you're like, anywhere. It's all good. So,
Last note, I heard Bryson
Fucking Bryson
is going to contend at the U.S. Open if and only if he can find a golf ball that goes straighter. And he's putting it solely on the backs of the manufacturers now to figure that out. So, Titleist guys, I know he's played a Titleist ball. If you guys, I mean, I don't know what you guys are doing sitting there not figuring out how
I thought, right, if you read, the, he's messing with the LA golf driver that he designed, right? That was designed by Bryson, an LA golf driver that is supposed to fly straight no matter where you hit it on the face, right? He solved that problem several months ago. Right? Like, he had it wrapped up. Like, Bryson's mind solved the problem, designed a driver, boom, good. Now it's the golf ball's fault. Like, no, man. If you want to hit a golf ball straighter, I got a suggestion, right? Based on our ball test from last year, you want to take some curve out, you need to take some spin out. Go get yourself a not your ball. The not your ball, super low spinning, that might help. It's not gonna help you around the green, but you hit it so high, it probably doesn't matter. Right. Not your ball. Hey, Callaway super soft. Right? You're going to lose some distance, but it's going to fly straighter. It's not going to spin around the green, but you're going to love the feel. Right. Super soft. You got options.
I appreciate.
He's already in left dash, right? He's already playing left dash. At some point, you know what? Scottie didn't have this problem when he won the tournament, right? He's not talking about how much more he could win if TaylorMade balls flew straighter, or Titleist balls, right? Wow, we had that conversation already. Titleist golf ball, right? So at some point, it's just like, this is Bryson. There's YouTube Bryson, and then there's the real petulant guy that comes out when things don't go well. And there's a little bit of all of us, a little bit of that, and all of us on the golf course, right? Like, I'm the first guy to blame a lie when I don't hit a good shot.
Sure.
But at some point, you just have to go, hey man, like, everybody else is competing with similar equipment and they're doing just fine, and you need the ball to fly straighter. You need the driver to fly straighter. And like, at what point does it become the guy swinging it at the tour level?
Yeah. When is it actually the equipment? When is it the person using equipment? And
like, for me, it's the equipment. At Bryson's level, that's what I'm going with.
I mean, if you want to hit the ball straighter, Bryson, if you want the ball to go straighter, hit it straighter. That's my solution. All right, people, lots of good stuff. Let us know what you think. Last thing, if you can figure out where this hat is from, I got a Japanese head cover headed your way. First person that posted in the comments.
It looks like a tower at a prison.
Might be. Could have been where I was this weekend. Until next time, we out.